I'm Naya, mom, boob nerd, board-certified lactation consultant, and lover of lipstick and curse words. I'm that weird Indian girl you knew in high school, all grown up.
And I'm Alexis, mom, birth nerd, and therapist plus doula, encouraging parents to hold joy plus what the fuck is this mess simultaneously. Some people think I'm too much, but those aren't my people. And we are the Top Knot Squad. TKS is a tiny little podcast about motherhood in real life, the good, the bad, the ugly AF.
Hosted by two women that are passionate about our beliefs and unafraid to speak our minds.
Friends that wanted to create space for all that ish we are too scared to talk about.
Are you ready to laugh, be vulnerable, and keep it real with us?
Top knots are not required.
If the Top Knot Squad content makes you laugh, nod in agreement, or makes you feel less alone, we'd love your support in the cost of producing this podcast. Visit patreon.com/TopKnotSquad to learn more about our budget-friendly sponsorship tiers and how you can help ensure that TKS has a future. Every little bit helps.
On this episode of the Top Knot Squad, we will be talking about what it's like to parent as a trauma survivor and how we can discuss right from wrong touch with our kids. According to the National Center for Victims of Crimes, 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys have been sexually abused before their 18th birthday. There are 42 million survivors of child sexual abuse in America. 3 million are children, which would fill 46 national football stadiums. 90% of children are sexually abused by someone they know and trust. There are over 747,000 registered sex offenders in America. Today, we don't just want to talk about how to eliminate this crisis, but also discuss what happens when a survivor gives birth and faces their own parenting journey. For many survivors of childhood abuse, symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, may reoccur or never arise until they become a parent. All of us have struggled with mom guilt at some point or another, but parenting survivors are at an increased risk for internalizing shame and can find themselves feeling triggered while navigating the trenches of parenthood. Today, we are thrilled to have our friend and colleague, Lindsay Thomason, joining us for this conversation. Lindsay is a survivor of childhood sexual abuse and the owner and founder of the Nanny League, an elite placement agency that matches affluent families with college-educated nannies. She started the agency in 2010 after pursuing a career in television and film that ultimately led her to taking on a live-in nanny role for a high-profile family in Los Angeles. Lindsay and her team of women behind the brand have successfully built a database of thousands of professional college-educated nannies, baby nurses, and personal assistants, and have matched them with families across the U.S. The Nanny League has been featured in People Magazine, New York Magazine, Us Weekly, My Fox LA, Celebrity Baby Scoop, and Lindsay appeared on Austin's Studio 512 last winter. In 2017, Lindsay was nominated for LA Business Journal's 2017 Women's Summit CEO of the Year. She proudly serves on the board as an associate for Stop the Silence, Stop Child Sexual Abuse, and has most recently helped develop an online training program to educate nannies about child sexual abuse prevention and mitigation. The Nanny League is the first ever nanny agency to mandate this training for its members. Lindsay currently resides in Austin, Texas with her husband, Eric, their 6-month-old twins, Betty and Sarge, and her dog, Evie. She is extremely passionate about educating people on childhood sexual abuse and is dedicated to maintaining the Nanny League's reputation as one of the best nanny matchmaker agencies in the U.S. Whew, damn, girl.
What an intro. We're so glad to have you.
I mean, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, guys. That was such a nice intro. Thank you so much.
Well, we're really excited to have you on, and I guess I probably should have said a disclaimer at the beginning that, you know, this definitely can be a heavy topic, so self-care and just take care of yourself as you're listening if you need to. But we really appreciate you taking time to come and talk to us about something that's difficult to talk about.
No, absolutely. And I think that's important too, that, you know, making that disclaimer, and anyone that if this conversation triggers anything within someone, that's completely normal. But, you know, tread lightly. So I agree with you that if it does trigger anything, my apologies. But I actually don't apologize for that because I think that's where work actually starts. So,
absolutely.
But do take care of yourself. So thanks for saying that.
Can we go ahead and start by just hearing a little bit about your story, whatever you're comfortable sharing with us?
Yeah. No, sure. I mean, I guess I'll just kind of start the beginning. I grew up, I won't go my whole life story, but I grew up in a small town outside of Philadelphia, in a town in South Jersey called Haddonfield. And I then went on to pursue television, radio, and film studies at Syracuse. And my minor there was in psychology. And, you know, I attribute now so much of that time in my life, or those really diving into psychology, into biopsychology, into social psychology and birth order and why we are the way we are, to my own coming out, and what I like to call my coming out in terms of, you know, coming out with my truth and talking about having been molested by my father. And it really wasn't until that time, I think, with graduation looming over my head, you know, you're about to be catapulted into the real world. You're leaving another kind of safety net of anything that you've ever known, you know, besides obviously the kind of weird trauma that happened, I think, just from first time leaving home. Now it's like, oh shit, what else is after college? You know, you've kind of been trained your whole life. You go to school, you go to high school, you go to college, and then it's like real world. But what does that mean? What does that look like? And it scared the shit out of me. And I think in turn, it really sparked my own PTSD. And during my senior year, I had just kind of a breakdown with my girlfriends around, people I felt safe around, and came out about everything, or a lot of the things, probably not everything, about what I endured as a child at the hands of my abusive father, you know, both sexually, physically, and emotionally. And it was one of the most traumatic yet freeing and beautiful experiences of my life. And I'm very fortunate to have had such a wonderful support system. I think that, you know, really the most important thing for survivors in general, you have to feel safe in order to talk about this. And unfortunately in our society and just the way things are, a lot of people don't have that. And that's what also stifles people from coming forward. I think things are finally starting to change, which is nice. But yeah, so it brings me here into having this conversation and continuing to talk about it. And I don't think I've shut up since that moment, whether you like it or not, you know. And at times I think it was a scary place for me, because it was like, hello, I'm Lindsay. I was molested by my dad. How are you? You know, and that can be kind of a dangerous thing. More so, kind of, you know, when you go through any kind of trauma, your way of coping can be oversharing. And not necessarily with the right people, you know, or the right crowd. And that can just kind of start a whole other slew of stuff. But I did end up going into therapy. And of course, it was not the right therapist at first. And this is something I will always say to people too, like, look at therapy or anything, doctors, anything that comes to helping yourself, treat it just like you would something that you love outside of yourself, a car. Like, are you going to take it to just one auto body repair shop, or are you going to get a second opinion? Are you going to, you know, when you go to your child's doctor, are you going to just go by one doctor's opinion, or are you going to get another expert's opinion? You know, a therapist should be treated the same way. It's about finding the right fit. Absolutely. My first therapist that time in my life could have been more of a wrong fit. And every time I would talk to her about anything, you know, any of my past experiences, she would clench her necklace, and it was like so awkward. I'm like, listen, girl. Like,
oh God, that sounds
horrible. Enough about telling you this. Can you not have this visceral reaction? Because I'm already feeling like it was just really terrible. But I ended up finding someone after graduation back home. After I'd come out and told my mom, and, you know, my sister found out that she was also molested by my dad, and it was just a lot. But I found a good fit up until to at least get me, I think, in the right mindset, or so I thought, strong enough to then where I was able to continue and move to LA and start my career and follow my dreams, you know. And of course, life happens. And I kind of put therapy and all those things I put all those things on the back burner, for probably 10 years, because it was just chasing this dream and thinking that the answers and, all of that. And finally surrendering to that I didn't, and my way wasn't working. Yes, I don't know. I don't know if that kind of helps start, but
no, that's
perfect. Us up to where we are now.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I was going to say, I'm so glad that you persisted with finding the right therapist, because even what you were speaking about as far as being able to share your truth, the cultural narrative that survivors receive is that we're not supposed to talk about it. It's taboo, brush it under the rug. We don't want to hear about what happened to you. And we're culturally silenced. And so when you have an experience like that where you finally start to share something about your truth and it's not a good fit, that can be really harmful and limit your capacity for healing and moving in a different direction.
Absolutely. And I think when you're that vulnerable, it can damage you further, and that you just give up and then there's no way, and that's when that's what it is very dangerous. And I think that's when you have any person in a position of power, even a therapist, you probably shouldn't have that job, quite frankly, or be dealing with survivors of sexual trauma, because that's just not the way you respond, and it just goes for anyone, but it's, and intentional or not, but you're in a position where you have to be intentional with everything you say and do, because that's why we're there, Maybe maybe pursue a different career, or stick to, something that's not going to spark that kind of reaction in you.
Maybe just work on your poker face. That's
right?
it. Yeah.
I mean, seriously, I was like, girl, I definitely would love to take you to Vegas because you suck at it.
I mean, my hope is that therapist was just inexperienced, but still, you need to recognize if that's the case and refer out.
I mean, she was okay. 100 years old too, so I don't know what the hell she's
then she
doing.
Probably wasn't inexperienced. That's just I don't know what to say about that.
Right. I'd like to give her the benefit of the doubt. I mean, I don't even remember her name, to be honest with you. But that's just something, I think it's important to constantly, anyone that in your life who's like, I've tried therapy and it didn't work for me. It's like, well, how many did you go through? How many did you interview people before you met? Did you, and I know it's work. It's exhausting to have to retell and relive your own pain and your own story, but it's a part of the process, and it's a part of the process of healing. So it's really important.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, if that's okay. Just to our questions. You talked a little bit about how finding the right fit with the right therapist sort of helped you with your healing. Can you share anything else, any other supports that you may have had that have helped your healing?
I mean, your own support system, whatever that looks like, friends, family, people that you trust implicitly, I think, and that's, it's hard to find that sometimes, but when you do keep those people close, and I think that's really important. Talk therapy, has been my saving grace, as well with just the tools that I've learned from therapy. Whether it be just really, it comes down to self-love, which really comes from the practice of self-care. So doing little things, whether it's journaling, going to hot yoga, screaming into a pillow, taking a bath with a face mask, whatever, just the tiniest little thing, one thing a day, has helped me just really begin to love myself. And in that process, it's, brought peace into my life, and in turn has helped me become a more mindful person and who's more present in general. And that's always been my, biggest kind of conquest, or what I've wanted to achieve, is being present and fully mindful.
Which is huge when we talk about parenting, right? And
100%.
And I had written this down as that, it's my opinion that parenting as a survivor Like, you not only have to commit to raising your children, but you also have to commit to kind of re-raising yourself. And that speaks to a lot of what you're talking about with self-love and compassion. And I mean, I think that's true for every single parent. Like, you don't have to have experienced childhood sexual abuse, but when you have a trauma like that, it just adds an extra layer of how critical that is for you to be able to stay present and mindful in your parenting.
Absolutely. And I think to give yourself grace, ultimately you're doing the best you can, no matter what, whatever it is. And,
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, what has, you've talked a lot about your journey kind of pre-children, but since Betty and Sarge entered the picture, what has that been like for you? Have things surfaced at all? And how have you kind of navigated that?
Well, I think really, it's funny when I think about what when I set out, I kind of talked about leaving to LA and pursuing this career in TV, film, and whatnot. And if you had told me at the time that I was going to own a nanny company, I would have been like, yeah, screw you, That's not. But then I'm like, no, that makes actually 100% sense, because I was the neighborhood babysitter. I love kids. That's ultimately my passion. And so it really makes so much sense. Every part of that experience has led me to exactly where I am today. And I really honor and cherish the good, bad, and the ugly that has brought me here. But with that said, in regards to your question, I was able to do a lot of healing and work through other people's kids, which sounds maybe a little weird, but, having been a nanny, I was able to love and heal myself a lot through living kind of vicariously through these other children by taking care of them, by nurturing myself along with nurturing them. And in one instance, particularly when I had gone into intense therapy in my 30s, or when I was 30, I was nannying for a little girl who looked just like me as a little girl. And it was extremely therapeutic, literally, to see this 2-year-old who was just the sweetest, most innocent, wonderful person. And to think that happened to me, my earliest memories and trauma was at that age. And to be able to forgive myself, the little girl inside of me that really had died and that whose innocence was, taken away at such a young age. And realize that it wasn't fair and it wasn't right and it wasn't my fault. So that was really just a visceral experience. It was really healing. It was really, really hard. But to be able to kind of have that slap in my face before I had kids of my own, I think was really, I hate to use the word special, but I mean, it was, I was very fortunate to have that opportunity. Because I think it's helped me heal a lot of those old wounds before having kids of my own. And so, when things do come up for me now, which of course they do every day, there's something that makes me think of the past. I have the tools, because I put the work in and going to therapy and learning kind of how to cope and to take a day and lay in bed if I need to, snuggle the babies. Like, you don't have to be super mom every fucking second. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's really practicing that self-care and self-love, and just being my own advocate for that, saying no, not always being a yes person.
Yeah.
But that's really hard, it's hard for anyone. You don't have to have been molested to feel that way. But I think with children, when you have your own children, you are reminded of your own childhood and things come up naturally because you're like, wait a minute. How could that, you're looking exactly at the age of maybe when something traumatic happened to you or whatever it would be. And you think, you always think of yourself, at least I do, as the same age. Like, my soul is this ageless. Like, I feel like I'm the same exact person as I was when I was trying to run out of a bathroom and, something was happening that I knew was wrong, because my fight or flight response is still that same feeling. It still gives me the same feeling as it does today as it did then. You know, it's that physiological thing that happens to you during any kind of traumatic event. And that's like everlasting. So I think it's those, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here, but I think, basically it's hard to, if you haven't had the opportunity to heal old wounds, it definitely will come up when you're a parent. And that's, it's okay, but it's really important to seek the help that you need to kind of work through it and move on. Because you don't want to repeat the cycle. I think that's everything for me, and what I'm very cognizant about is that, I have the power to break the cycle. And that's what everyone has, that same power. Some just don't realize it, but it's really important that you do whatever it takes so that you do break that cycle. So I think that's just your job as a parent.
Yeah. I was talking to a friend earlier today, and we were kind of talking about just the concept of healing. And I was kind of talking to her about how we've been trying to have another baby, and it hasn't been working, and how I've re-entered therapy because I do think that my trauma is kind of getting in the way. And so I was like, I've re-entered therapy, and because I still have to heal all this time later. There's still some shit there. And she was like, well, healing's never over because you keep living life. Like life, it doesn't end until you die.
You're not just like saved. It's not like this answer. And I think that's why, when I first came out about, hey, this is me, this is what happened. I had it with a torch and was like, fuck everyone. I hate you all. I'm going to kill every man alive. And how dare you don't know, you haven't been through anything in your life, just angry and just against the world and woman power and whatever. And it's like, it doesn't matter what happened to you, it's how you handle it. And if you were just a toe model and all you did was bump your toe and you couldn't toe model anymore, that's right. You're entitled to have that pain. And it's like, and for us, for anybody who is a survivor, it's like, it's not just this, instant fix. There's not this instant gratification. I think once you kind of accept that, it makes it a little bit easier. Do you find that you've given yourself a little bit more grace, just being like, okay, this is just how life is. And I just need to kind of accept that this is part of my story. It doesn't define me, but I have to actually keep putting in the work towards it and understanding that different things are going to come up because, life happens. Yeah. Shit happens, unfortunately.
And no matter what I've learned, too, is I put this in the resources, too, but the book, The Body Keeps the Score, I don't know if you've read it, but it's by Bessel van der Kolk. It's a book about trauma and just how the body stores it. And, even if we, cognitively have these tools and are feeling good despite the hurdles of life coming our way, our body sometimes remembers things for us that, are deep-rooted, and those can come up like you were describing with that fight or flight response. And so learning how to be able to trust our bodies and listen to what they have to tell us too can be really huge.
Yeah. And it's really scary, and I think that's why that support system is really, really important to have that in place so that you're setting yourself up for, success. And success meaning just that you're able to feel, you're able to grieve, you're able to, deal, and hopefully, heal eventually, or at least to a point where you've been able to forgive, whatever it is. That's happened or that kind of stifled you or put you in this place, I guess, so to speak.
Lindsay, you mentioned some of the self-care that you do, and whether, like you said, whether it's, hot yoga or snuggling in bed with the babies for the day and canceling all your plans. Do you still go to therapy? Do you still work with someone if something big came out, or if something big sort of bubbled up to the surface?
Yeah, so I have a therapist who I love that I had met in New Jersey, and I was going to her twice a week for a year, and then a year just once a week. And I think I was even going like 3 days a week at one point, but eventually then dwindled down. And then I moved back to California. And so we started Skyping. So she offers Skype sessions. And now I haven't been to her in a while, but I know that I can text her at any minute and say, hey, I need a session, and she'll drop anything. We have a great relationship. I think it almost got, though, more to where I was feeling like she was an aunt figure, and I was like, wait, this isn't actually healthy. I need to kind of separate or maybe even look into something else, because I don't want to feel like I'm disappointing my therapist. I don't know if anyone who's listening that's been in therapy or been with the same therapist long enough that it kind of becomes this, not a codependent relationship, but I think that's a natural kind of response in general. And for me, and that's just, I knew that was unhealthy. So it was like, okay, I got to separate from this for a minute. I can't be looking at my therapist like, a family member. And we're worried about what I say if it's going to, hurt her or something. But I think I have to practice what I preach, right? Yeah. Looking back into that myself. But, I think a lot of the things that help me or continue to help me are the same things that did then. And one of the great books that, helped change my life was The Courage to Heal, and also the Courage to Heal workbook. So those are two things I definitely recommend. And just journaling alone has been something huge for me.
I wanted to ask this. This was part of the reason why I was excited that we were discussing this topic is I just don't think that, when we think about parenthood, that's not always, we're not talking about parenthood and trauma together. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, our culture just kind of pushes that aside. It's not something we think about, and we're not really having conversation with survivors about, your life might be cracked wide open and things might come up for you in parenthood. And it sucks that's that's the reality. Yeah. So I just wanted to we could all kind of share why the hell is that patriarchy?
Stupidity, ignorance. Yeah. I mean, I think just a lot of fear. Mm-hmm. And I think it's absolute fear. I think people are just, and so afraid. I mean, oh my God, it's one of the statistics speak for themselves, and they're faulty because a lot of people don't report.
Exactly.
And that's the scary thing. And it's like, if we can't freaking look at that in the face and say, this is a real issue. Hey, everyone in a room, raise your hand if you've been sexually assaulted in any which way form. I guarantee you, it's going to be like the whole damn room, mm-hmm. and men, that's a whole other issue that we have created a space that men are so ashamed mm-hmm. To talk about, especially child sexual abuse.
They're less likely to report.
What?
They're less likely to report.
Right.
Men
yeah.
are.
And, and I think that this conversation is really just beginning, with the Me Too movement, which has been kind of infuriating for me in some ways. It's been really wonderful because it's about damn time, but yet it's still, the topic of child sexual abuse is still on the back burner, and it's still the icky, weird place, and it's something that to me, it's like, my God, Bob, you were probably touched by, your uncle as a kid, and you're the one that's running away from this entire conversation because you are so afraid of admitting that. But if you did, you'd probably be such a better, such better off than you are, and would be, kind of helping the solution and not perpetuating the problem. And again, that comes to with breaking the cycle or not. I think a lot of people that have experienced abuse themselves in any way, shape, or form, are more likely to go on to abuse drugs and alcohol, to physically harm someone, sexually harm someone, so on and so forth. So it's just like, it's madness on madness, I guess, for a lack of better description. But it's
sorry.
Go ahead. No. Go
ahead.
I
was just going to say, I always like to reiterate the point about the majority of sexual abuse is committed by someone that the survivor knew.
That
Yeah, it's not.
And I think that's where a lot of the shame comes from, because, for me too, it doesn't discriminate. And people, I think, have a really hard time with the fact that I'm a white girl from a middle to upper class neighborhood, and it was my father. And it's like, well, wake up, guys. This is not as abnormal as you think, and that's something that's really important to spread that message, and that it can be that neighbor you trust, that you think it can be, it's anybody. And we're living in a society now, it's too dangerous to be polite. You have to ask the tough questions. You have to listen to your instincts. If you feel that something's wrong or off, follow through with it, because you're probably right.
Amen.
Sorry, I get really heated.
No, I love it.
I get really jazzed up about this conversation.
No, I see Naya writing something you said. So something resonated.
that whole it's too dangerous to be polite, and just really kind of following your gut. I think part of it is also just kind of, we talked about why, nobody warns survivors that things about parenting might bring up some emotions or PTSD or what have you. But I think a lot of it is that girls especially, and I was having this conversation earlier today, we're taught to be polite. We're taught not to make a scene. We're taught to be seen and not heard. And that's changing, thankfully. But then there's a whole generation of women our age and probably even a little older that need to unlearn a lot of that nonsense in order to be able to heal from whether it's sexual abuse, emotional abuse, whatever, from whatever shit they've been through. They need to remember that if something doesn't feel good, it probably isn't okay. That really resonated with me.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that and that's the hardest part, though, when you are abused, by someone that you're supposed to trust, and if it's by someone that your parents trust. The perpetrator's entire angle is to make it out like, this is our secret, and you can't tell, and no one's going to believe you, and and that really makes you second guess yourself, and that carries through the rest of your life. That second guessing and questioning. Am I at fault for this? Am I, does my opinion, should I say something? Should I not? All of that. And I think our job as parents as well, is to always let our children know that they will be believed, and that that we are a safe place, that no matter what, they will be believed. And that, and then we can get into just talking about having that conversation about personal body safety, with your child.
I wanted to let's move into that part of the discussion, because you had mentioned right from wrong touch and teaching that to our kids. Is that a part of the Stop the Silence training, or tell us more about that?
Yeah, so that's kind of different. So Erin Marin is someone who I have admired and loved from, when I first kind of came out, as I said, with my own abuse. She has created Erin's Law, which is now in 37 states, which is amazing. And she has been a pioneer for survivors and helping getting legislation passed in our schools that teaches safe and unsafe body touch. And I think that is amazing, because it is as imperative as learning the fire drill, stop, drop, and roll. You have to know what to do in this circumstance. And kids need to know that no matter who it is, that, whoever it is that touches them inappropriately, it's wrong, and that they will be believed, and nothing can take that away. The reality is, as you said, it's 90% of the time those children are being abused by someone they know and trust. So it's really important that we're talking to kids about their personal, body safety. because the fact is that they're more likely statistically to be molested than to be hit by a car. And that is like beyond frightening to me. So
can you speak more to like language that parents can use when having those conversations?
Sure. Yeah. No, I think a good place, what Erin talks about too, and this is really coming from her, is that you can start as early as age 2. I think a great place is, when you're bathing your toddler, saying that no one's, allowed to touch them, that they're, to understand too that these are your private parts. Basically, it's, a great way of explaining it is saying that areas covered by your swimsuit. And usually with Texas, it's nice because kids are usually in their swimsuits.
Right.
And never kind of a weird time, I guess, to have that conversation. But saying, as I talked about that icky feeling, my fight or flight response, letting a child know that, hey, when you know something's not right, you get that feeling in your tummy. And if you do, tell me about it, empower them that they can leave a situation and find another adult to talk to, someone that's safe. I think it's just really important that they know that they're not going to be in trouble if something were to happen. But if they have that feeling, no matter what anyone says, they come to mommy and daddy about it. For me, of course, that's so weird because it's like my dad was my abuser. So I'm like, Mom, nobody should be touching you. Nobody should be bathing you. No one should be, and I think, so for me, I will be talking to Betty and Sarge about that they are the only ones to be touched, and privately, they can't not each other, you keep your hands to yourself, but you're the only one that to be bathing yourself, cleaning yourself, so on and so forth. But I think kind of delicately saying with the swimsuit area and describing, and giving examples, saying, about keeping, like giving an example of what's a secret, like what's a good secret and a bad secret. A safe secret, it's like a surprise birthday party. What is your brother getting for Christmas? If it's something that's an unsafe secret is if their friend's getting bullied on a school bus. Erin talks about this on her website too, or your friend tells you that her stepdad's taking pictures of her naked. Like little things like that, just giving full examples so that you really break it down for the child is important, and kids are sponges. I mean, my first memory is pre-verbal. And we look at kids like, we can just they got away with it. No, they're listening to everything we say and do, whether we like it or not. They are just old little souls and sponges that are, that are innocent. And it's our job to keep them as innocent as long as possible, But I really believe that. I feel like I'm the same exact person as I was then. I just had to grow up a lot faster, I think. Having had that, innocence taken away. And unfortunately, a lot of people are in the same position. But I think also just talking more about safe touches, giving a high five, giving a hug, putting your hands down someone's pants is unsafe touch. Your brother pulling your hair is unsafe touch. It doesn't have to always be sexual right away. You can just give examples. And make them feel empowered and that they are the boss of their own body, ultimately.
And just to add to that, I know that this is something that we've touched on in the podcast in previous episodes, but autonomy, just kind of what you said about if you don't have to force a child to give a relative or a friend or a neighbor or whomever a hug if they don't want to. Say, okay, you don't want a hug, how about a high five? And even if they don't want to do that, then that's okay. And the adult needs to respect the child's opinion.
Absolutely. And I think that's so, so important because it's like, I never even thought of that because it was just so ingrained of like, that's what you do. And it's like, but it never felt right with some people, you're like, ew, I don't want to hug like Uncle Steve. Like he's a freaking weirdo, you know?
That's that whole,
bad. Like, let me give him a fist bump, I just don't want to smell him.
That's that whole being polite, right?
Yes, exactly.
Right, exactly.
We're ingrained to be polite.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just too dangerous to be polite. I mean, hashtag that. Too dangerous to be polite. That is the truth.
So can you tell us more a little bit about Stop the Silence and how you got involved?
Yeah, so I was, a research. So that's what I do when I come up with any kind of idea or have this new whole thing. This was obviously a rebirth and awakening for myself. So it was like, okay, Google, tell us like what 501. Oh my gosh, I can't even speak. What nonprofits have are geared towards this, and it was like crickets. I'm like, hello, wow. Google, what's happening here? Why isn't there like 1,000?
Yeah.
There weren't. I don't think that's changed that much, unfortunately. But Angela Shelton was one pioneer, one woman who had done a documentary that I really admired. I reached out to her. I reached out to Dr. Pamela J. Pine, who started Stop the Silence, Stop Child Sexual Abuse. And she and I just hit it off. And it made sense for us to partner in that I wanted to donate any either proceeds from each placement or to do an event each year, kind of a benefit or charity event where the proceeds go to Stop the Silence and helping them with their programming, with helping them do the great work that they do. And a few years ago, I came up with the idea of this online nanny training program that nannies, as I said earlier, kids are taught stop, drop, and roll, first aid CPR certification. Why aren't they being taught what to look for, kids that are being abused, what to look for in perpetrators, how to report it? And so Pam went with it, and she and her team created the training, and now we've mandated it. So all of our nannies have to take the training to be members with us. And so in turn, we've been raising, lots of money for them every day, which is great. And I just hope that it catapults. I hope more agencies catch on. That's been kind of a challenge. And I hope, once I'm kind of back out of my mommy fog that I still think I'm somewhat in.
Hey, it's only been 6 months. Yeah.
Hey, I'm like owning it. I'm like, I'm okay with this, but that's what it is. I'm like, or I've just completely lost my mind, which is possible too. But I think once I do get back to work, it will be, I would love to focus more on helping, just continuing the work and spreading the word and getting more agencies involved. Maybe re-looking at the training and seeing what we can do there as well. I actually reached out to Erin Marin today, so you guys inspired me to do that because I was like, I knew I was going to talk about her, and I'm like, I just need to talk to this girl myself. We are Facebook friends, and I have never talked to her, so
awesome.
Yeah, I'm hoping something can come from that because I think the work she's doing, it's so important. It's universal. As I said again, and I'll say it a million more times, it does not discriminate. Child sexual abuse does not discriminate, and it's a global, it's a pandemic. So it's something that we all really have to talk about and continue to talk about.
Absolutely. Well, I would love to keep talking to you for like 18 hours about this, but we're out of time.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. Do you have any other?
Again, I know I can go on and on.
No, you were awesome. I know you shared a lot of resources as we were talking, but is there anything that you really wanted to share about resource-wise that we didn't mention?
There are some books. I know that, I wrote them down for people because they are good about when it comes to talking to your kids specifically. Erin does recommend this discussion or to have the discussion about, private parts and whatnot it's called The Swimsuit Lesson, and it's by John Holston. And then another great book about the, right and wrong touch is called The Right Touch, and that's by Sandy Clevin.
Awesome.
And then again, as I said, just for survivors, specifically women survivors, I think it could work, for males as well, but it's The Courage to Heal and the Courage to Heal workbook, which is by Ellen Bass and Laura Davis.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
And now a message from our episode sponsor, the Nanny League.
The Nanny League is dedicated to matching high-profile families with professional nannies who are college-educated, highly competent, creative, and nurturing individuals. Through a trusted and personalized process, we will help you find the perfect nanny to fit your special family. Whether a seasoned nanny or a fresh-faced nanny out of college, all of our applicants go through a highly discriminating selection and screening process that includes background check, thorough reference review, and more. No matter where you call home, every family deserves the best. From Los Angeles to New York City, Austin to San Francisco, we are here to help you find the perfect fit for your family. In each city, we keep in close contact with our partners and child care experts to bring highly skilled, passionate caregivers and dynamic families together. Visit thenannyleague.com today. We look forward to serving you.
If the Top Knot Squad's content makes you laugh, nod in agreement, or makes you feel less alone, we'd love your support in the cost of producing this podcast. Visit patreon.com/TopKnotSquad to learn more about our budget-friendly sponsorship tiers and how you can help ensure that TKS has a future. Every little bit helps.
If you like what you hear, then be sure to click the subscribe button in your podcast app. While you're there, leave us a review. You can find us on social media. Just search for Top Knot Squad. We welcome your feedback and love making new friends.